Been 4 months since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and since then, the global economy has begun to see the impacts of the war. I spoke with Radityo Dharmaputra, an international relations lecturer at the University of Erlanga, who is currently a PhD student at the Tartu University in Estonia, to talk about the global fuel and food crisis, and also what it means for commodity costs inside Russia.
Since Russia plays a significant role in oil and wheat exports in the global economy, how does this impact the global fuel and energy crisis? What does this also mean for Russia's food and gas prices inside the country?
I'm currently in Estonia, and food prices are now 30–40% higher than before. Gas prices as well. The inflation is almost 30%. So we feel the economic aspect of the war. Russia, at the moment, is not. At least the people is not feeling it. To that extent that people in the beginning predicted that Russia also will collapse because they cannot sustain this. But with the energy money from Europe, with the help from other countries still doing business with Russia, they can still maintain this until this moment.
A Singaporean undergraduate student, Nigel Li, who is studying at the Moscow State Institute of International Relations, shares his experience on what food prices have been like in Moscow.
Food prices, I would say, if you're talking about like bread and rice or like buckwheat, which is a staple here, it's unchanged more or less. But if you're talking about, say, eating at a restaurant or even at my university's cafeteria, things have gone up noticeably.
With many global brands having left Russia, I asked Nigel Li what the market has been like to purchase goods.
If you were to purchase like a smartphone or a laptop, are they much more expensive now? Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, definitely much more expensive now. I don't even bother to go to the electronic stores or look at the prices now because they're just much more expensive, 30% more expensive probably.
The iconic American chain McDonald's has also left Russia and has been rebranded as Tasty and That's It. Nigel Li has said he tried the fast food chain at least 3 times since its opening. From what he has seen, Nigel says that people aren't particularly upset with McDonald's exit, as long as they can get their fix, no matter the brand.
I've been there and I tried it a couple of times, at least 3 times now over the course since it's opened. It's practically the same with just some menu items that we're familiar with, like the Big Mac, for example, gone. But it's all the same, and it's just an aesthetic change. But I think people, as long as they're able to get their cheeseburgers and fries, I think people are going to be satisfied. And I think people will just forget about McDonald's and just move on. In fact, people still call it McDonald's. With my friends, I still call it McDonald's, even though there's a new name for it. So it doesn't really matter much.
Nevertheless, Russian malls have now become half empty as dozens of Western companies have halted operations in the country. Popular clothing brands, both high fashion and fast fashion brands, are no longer available in Russia. According to Russia's Federal State Service, on a monthly basis, retail sales declined by 9.67% by the end of April. Although it has slightly increased by 0.9% at the end of May 2022, retail sales are still much lower compared to before the war.
All right, well, amidst heavy Western sanctions, the question remains, what is the situation really like in Russia and how are the people there managing? Well, to find out more, we are joined today by Nigel Li, a Singaporean student studying in Moscow, Russia. Hi, Nigel. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Nigel. So as we heard just now, retail sales in Russia dropped by 9.7% in April. So is the condition there really affecting you? Are you spending a lot less now?
Yes, definitely spending a lot less because prices have gone up, but also more importantly for me personally, because I've been having difficulties getting money into Russia. To preempt any question about how I'm going on right now, I managed to get enough money into Russia prior to a lot of the banks being removed from SWIFT. enough for me to survive the summer, and I'll be returning to Singapore for a bit in August. So for now, so far, everything's okay for me. Yeah.
All right, so talking about the money. So you're saying that right now you cannot get money from back home at all. You cannot have your family send you money from Singapore to Russia at all.
Well, not directly. So
Right.
there are ways I could go around it. We have some, friends who have accounts in China who can send it to them, and then through them to me in Russia. So there are ways about it, but of course it's just extra barriers and the options there.
Right, so as you were saying earlier, you have a sort of a limited cache of money to get you through the summer. Is that what I'm hearing? So are you really having
Yes.
to ration the amount of money you can spend a week because prices have gone so high up? Is that what the experience is like for you?
I mean, certainly things that we are used to, purchasing cheaply. Like for example, there is a famous coffee chain, Coffix, which would sell their coffee before the sanctions and everything at 60 rubles, which is about a dollar, Singapore dollar. But now they changed it to 90 rubles. So I would rather just make coffee at home rather than having coffee outside. So things like that, changes in spending habits, definitely. And I think that's just a prudent thing to do in general, regardless of a war or any effects of the sanctions.
Right, but I also want to ask you, what about transportation costs? As we know, fuel prices have gone up, around the world. Is it much more expensive for you to get around, for example?
So far, public transport fees have remained unaffected for me. I don't drive, so I'm not directly affected, getting gas from a pump. But because Russia has its vast gas resources, they managed to maintain the energy prices here so far.
Right. Now, going back to sort of having money and keeping money, you are from Singapore, your family's in Singapore, so to get money from Singapore to Russia, as you said, is not possible, not directly anyway. But from what you
directly, yes.
yeah, directly, it's not possible at all because, as we know, banks in Russia have been cut off from the SWIFT international financial system. But from what you've seen so far, your friends and so forth, are you seeing people in Russia? Is it becoming more of a cash-based system over there? Are people just relying on cash only, Nigel?
No, actually, because Russia has its own system of payment, the MIR system. So the banks still issue cards that are able to use this system. And so in Russia, I think people have gotten used to the cashless system. I think for people who don't have access to this, for example, some exchange students that I knew, they used cash because that was the only way that they could make payment. But Russia remains mostly cashless.
Are you managing okay? You said you have a limited, amount of cash, but are you managing okay, or is this kind of a situation that's kind of stressing you out, maybe?
I think it's okay now. In the beginning, definitely, for everyone, it was stressful because there was a bank run and everyone was lining up to the ATMs and stuff like that. But I think everything now is pretty calm, and the government has the intention to keep the situation calm because that's their way of maintaining legitimacy. Any way of creating chaos or worry in society is going to have people question this current situation and the special military operation and so forth.
Right, so you're seeing a sort of a message of calm and you're feeling that, I'm guessing. Now, another thing I want to talk to you about is kind of air travel. Now, you are from Singapore. What has air travel looked like for you? Are you able to easily fly back home? What has your overall experience been like with traveling in and out of Russia?
So I haven't traveled out of Russia since the situation began. I will be going back in August, as I mentioned, and I have a flight booked through the UAE, and that's a flight path that remains open for most people wanting to leave Russia. Some exchange students that I bade farewell to, they have left by going to St. Petersburg and then taking a bus to Tallinn in Estonia. So they have ways through the land border as well.
Right, ways of managing. Now, just very, very quickly, Nigel, with the current situation, what are your future plans in Russia? Are you still planning on staying there and finishing your studies, or is there some kind of other plans you've kind of had in mind? Please,
well, certainly as an international relations student, I finally get to see something of such a, restructuring of the global order in such magnitude in person and where it's happening, I still have one more year left, so I will finish up and we'll see where things go after.
Okay, Nigel, all the best to you. Let us hope this war ends soon and hope that things are okay with you over there in Russia. Nigel, thank you so much for sharing your experience in Moscow, Russia, amid this ongoing war and crises around the world. Thank you, Nigel.